hid from my family that I owned a successful company. They thought I was just a crazy cat lady. At a family dinner, my niece said, "Too bad you never achieved anything in life." The next day, I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 23 years, I'd been living a carefully constructed lie. My name is Margaret Collins, though everyone calls me Maggie, and at 58 years old, I'd mastered the art of invisibility. To my family, I was the quirky cat lady, the spinster aunt who'd never quite figured out how life worked, the one they pitied at Thanksgiving dinners and forgot to invite to weddings until the last minute. The truth? I owned Collins and Associates, a boutique consulting firm specializing in corporate restructuring. We had offices in 3 cities, 42 employees, and last year's revenue had crossed $8 million. But nobody in my family knew that. Why did I hide it? The answer was complicated, rooted in a lifetime of being told I wasn't good enough. My sister Deborah had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect husband, perfect children. When my marriage fell apart at 35 and I started my business from my spare bedroom, my family's response had been dismissive. "Oh, Maggie's trying another one of her little projects," my mother had said, the words dripping with the kind of condescension that burrows under your skin. So I stopped telling them. When the business succeeded, I kept quiet. When we landed our first Fortune 500 client, I stayed silent. It became easier to let them think I was barely scraping by as a freelance consultant than to face their questions, their sudden interest, their inevitable attempts to become involved. I lived modestly, at least visibly. My house was comfortable but unremarkable. I drove a 7-year-old Honda. I wore clothes from department stores. The money went into investments, retirement accounts, and a private life my family never saw. But lately, things had been shifting. It started small. At my nephew's graduation party in June, Deborah had made a comment about how at least some of us managed to build stable lives. The implication was clear. Then there was the intervention-style conversation where my niece Ashley suggested I might want to explore my options for senior living communities. I was 58, not 88. "We're just worried about you, Aunt Maggie," Ashley had said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Living alone with all those cats, no real career, no savings. I had 3 cats, and more savings than everyone at that table combined." The comments grew more frequent, more pointed. Why hadn't I bought a new car? Didn't I worry about retirement? Had I considered that I might need help managing my finances as I got older? What were they planning? The answer came in October, quite by accident. I'd stopped by Deborah's house to drop off a book she'd wanted to borrow. She wasn't home, but the back door was open, and I heard voices from the kitchen. Ashley's voice, specifically. "Talk to a lawyer about the conservatorship process. If we can show she's not managing her affairs properly." I'd frozen in the hallway. "But she seems fine," another voice said. My younger niece, Emma. "It's not about seeming fine," Ashley replied. "It's about legal documentation. She lives alone, no steady income, probably has debt we don't know about. A judge would see she needs family oversight." My hands had started shaking. A conservatorship? They wanted to declare me legally incompetent? "I don't know, Ashley. It feels wrong." What feels wrong is watching her waste away in that house. We'd be helping her. And honestly, if there are any assets at all, family should manage them, not have them go to some nursing home eventually. There it was, the truth beneath the concern. I'd left silently, my heart hammering. For days, I could barely sleep. Why now? What had triggered this? Then I remembered. I'd recently sold my old car and bought a slightly newer used one. Nothing fancy, just reliable. But to them, even that small sign of having money had been a red flag. They didn't want to help me. They wanted control. And possibly they wanted whatever they thought I had. The realization was crushing. But what could I do? Reveal the truth? They'd been dismissing me for decades, and now they'd have proof I'd been lying, fuel for their narrative that I couldn't be trusted with my own decisions. I needed to think, to plan. The family dinner was scheduled for November 10th at Deborah's house. One of those mandatory gatherings where attendance was expected and absence would be noted, discussed, and used as evidence of my declining social engagement. I went. The evening proceeded normally at first. Small talk, passive-aggressive comments, the usual family dynamics. I sat quietly, picking at my food, playing the role I'd perfected. Then Ashley turned to me, wine glass in hand, voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. "So, Aunt Maggie, still doing your little consulting thing, or have you given that up?" "I'm still working," I said carefully. She exchanged a look with Deborah. "It's just, at your age, don't you think it's time to admit when something isn't working out? There's no shame in accepting help." "I'm doing fine, Ashley." "Are you, though?" She leaned forward, her expression a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Because honestly, Aunt Maggie, it's kind of sad. You're nearly 60, living alone with your cats, pretending you have this career when we all know you're barely getting by. It's just, well, it's a shame you never really accomplished anything with your life." The table went quiet. Something inside me snapped. 23 years of silence. 23 years of playing small, of hiding, of protecting myself from their judgment. And for what? So they could pity me? So they could plot to control me? I set down my fork with careful precision. "Actually, Ashley," I said, my voice steady and cold, "there's something I need to tell all of you." The words hung in the air. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. Deborah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Ashley's smile faltered slightly, uncertainty flickering across her face. But I couldn't do it, not yet. The magnitude of what revealing the truth would mean crashed over me like a wave. They'd know I'd lied for decades. They'd want explanations, access, involvement. Worse, they'd know there was something worth taking, and the conservatorship threat would intensify. I've been thinking about what you all said," I continued, shifting direction, "about planning for the future. You're probably right that I should be more open to family input." The relief on their faces was palpable and sickening. "Oh, Maggie, that's wonderful," Deborah gushed. "We only want what's best for you." I smiled weakly and excused myself to the bathroom. Inside, I gripped the sink and stared at my reflection. My hands were trembling. What was I doing? I'd almost handed them exactly what they needed. Evidence that I was unstable, unpredictable, making rash decisions. Everything that would support their narrative. I needed to be smarter than this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, my cat Oliver purring on my chest, and I did what I should have done weeks ago. I took inventory. What had I lost by staying silent? Respect, dignity, basic courtesy, the chance to be seen as a full person by my own family. What would I lose by continuing? My autonomy, my assets, possibly my freedom, if they succeeded in getting a conservatorship. And what did I have to fight with? Resources they didn't know about, legal protection they couldn't anticipate, knowledge of their plans while they remained ignorant of my reality. The fear that had gripped me at dinner began to transform into something else, something colder and more focused. They thought I was weak, vulnerable, an easy target. Let them keep thinking that, for now. By 3 a.m, I had the skeleton of a plan. I couldn't just reveal the truth. That would be reactive, defensive. I needed to be strategic. First, I needed to protect myself legally. Second, I needed documentation of their intentions. Third, I needed to control the narrative when the truth finally came out. The next morning, I called my attorney, Richard Paulson. We'd worked together for 15 years, and he knew my situation, including the family arrangement. Richard, I need to discuss some estate planning updates and possibly some protective measures. His voice sharpened with interest. What's happened, Maggie? I told him about the conservatorship conversation I'd overheard, about Ashley's comments at dinner, about the pattern of behavior that had been escalating. That's concerning, he said carefully. Have they filed anything yet? Not that I know of. Good. Then we're ahead of this. Come in today if you can. We need to build a fortress around your assets and legal status before they make a move. That afternoon, I sat in Richard's office while he outlined the strategy. First, a comprehensive medical evaluation from my doctor documenting my perfect cognitive health. Second, updated power of attorney documents explicitly excluding Deborah and her children and naming Richard as my attorney, in fact, if I became incapacitated. Third, a revocable trust to hold my assets, making them harder to access through conservatorship proceedings. We'll also prepare affidavits about your business operations, Richard continued. Evidence of your successful management of complex financial affairs. If they try to claim you're incompetent, we'll bury them in proof to the contrary. How long will this take? 2 weeks for everything to be properly documented and filed. But Maggie, he paused. This is defensive. It protects you from their schemes, but it doesn't address the underlying situation. Eventually, you'll need to confront them. I know. And they'll claim you've been lying, that you're secretive, deceptive. They'll use your own privacy against you. Let them. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. I stayed quiet to avoid their judgment and their greed. Turns out I get both anyway. Back home, I made more calls. To my accountant, asking for detailed documentation of my income and assets for the past 5 years. To my doctor's office, scheduling a complete physical and cognitive assessment. To my business partner, James, explaining that I might need him to provide testimony about my professional competence. Jesus, Maggie, James said. Your own family? Apparently. Each call, each document request, each piece of the defensive wall I was building felt like taking back power. For 23 years, I'd hidden, protected myself through invisibility. That strategy had failed. Now I would protect myself through overwhelming evidence. But even as I worked through the logistics, a deeper question gnawed at me. Why had I let it get this far? Why had I cared so much about their opinions that I'd made myself invisible? Was I angry at them for their greed and manipulation? Yes, but I was also angry at myself. For the years I'd wasted being small, for the relationship I'd sacrificed. My ex-husband had left partly because I wouldn't stand up to my family's criticism of him, for the celebrations I'd muted because I was afraid of their envy. No more. This wasn't just about protecting my assets. It was about reclaiming my life. The next family gathering was Thanksgiving, 3 weeks away. By then, all my legal protections would be in place. And by then, I'd decide exactly how to handle this. But first, I needed to know more about what they were planning. I needed to be certain about their intentions before I made my move. The medical evaluation was scheduled for Monday morning. Dr. Patricia Chen had been my physician for 12 years, and when I explained what I needed, her expression shifted from confusion to anger on my behalf. They're trying to claim you're incompetent? You? They don't know there's nothing to claim, I said. They think I'm barely functioning. She shook her head, already pulling up forms on her computer. We'll do a full cognitive battery, MMSE, Mosier, executive function tests, blood work to rule out any underlying conditions. I'll also write a detailed letter about your health status and my observations over the years of your judgment and capability. How long before you can have everything ready? Give me a week, I'll mark it priority. Leaving her office, I felt the first genuine sense of control I'd had in weeks. These weren't just defensive measures, they were proof, documentation, evidence that would make any judge laugh a conservatorship petition out of court. But I'd underestimated how quickly word travels in families. That evening, my phone rang. Deborah. Maggie, I heard you went to the doctor today. Is everything all right? My blood ran cold. How did she know? Then I remembered. Dr. Chen's office was in the same medical complex where Deborah's husband, Tom, worked as a pharmaceutical rep. Someone must have seen me, mentioned it casually. Just a checkup, I said carefully. Routine. At your age, there's no such thing as routine. Her voice had that edge of concern that I'd learned to recognize as manipulation. You know, if you're having health issues, you should tell family. We can help you navigate the medical system. I'm fine, Deborah. Are you seeing a specialist? Is it something serious? The pressure in her questions was unmistakable. She was fishing, trying to find ammunition. Any health issue, even minor, could be twisted into evidence of declining capacity. It's just a physical, blood pressure, cholesterol, the usual. A pause. Well, if you're sure. But Maggie, if you need help with medical decisions or managing prescriptions or anything like that, you know Ashley has that friend who's a geriatric care manager. I'm 58, Deborah, not 80. Of course. I just meant, well, it's good to plan ahead. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. They were monitoring me, or at least paying attention in ways they never had before. Had they always been this intrusive? Or was this new because they decided to move forward with their plans? I needed that proof. The overheard conversation in Deborah's kitchen might not be enough. I could have misunderstood, taken things out of context. I needed something concrete. The answer came from an unexpected source. My younger niece, Emma, called me 2 days later. Unlike Ashley, Emma had always been kinder, less openly hostile. We'd maintained a cordial relationship despite the family dynamics. Aunt Maggie, can we meet for coffee? I need to talk to you about something. We met at a quiet cafe on Thursday afternoon. Emma looked uncomfortable, stirring her latte without drinking it. I probably shouldn't be doing this, she said finally. Mom and Ashley would kill me if they knew. Knew what? She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then handed it to me. Ashley sent this in our family group chat, the one you're not in. I looked at the screen. It was a text thread from 3 days ago, right after my doctor's appointment. Ashley, Maggie went to the doctor on Monday. Tom's colleague saw her leaving. She looked upset. Deborah, did she say what for? Ashley, she's being cagey about it. Probably bad news she doesn't want to admit. Deborah, this might be the opening we need. Health crisis, proof she needs help managing her life. Ashley, exactly what I was thinking. I'll document every weird interaction we have. Build the case. Ashley, also, I've been going through public records. Her house is paid off, but it's only worth about $200K. No other property I can find. She probably has massive debt. Deborah, focus on the health angle. Debt can come later. First, we establish she needs oversight. Ashley, already on it. I'm keeping a journal of concerning behaviors. The cat hoarding, the social isolation, the defensive reactions when we offer help. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Emma reached over and steadied it. I have 3 cats, I whispered. That's not hoarding. I know, Aunt Maggie. This is wrong. That's why I'm showing you. Emma's eyes were wet. They've been planning this for months, ever since Ashley talked to that lawyer. I looked back at the messages scrolling up. There were more, weeks of them, discussions about my deteriorating condition, speculation about what assets I might have hidden, arguments about which of them would manage my care once they had control. This was the proof, premeditated, documented, undeniable. Emma, I need you to do something for me. Can you forward these messages to my email, all of them? Will you show them to a lawyer? Yes. She nodded and started forwarding. I feel terrible about this, about all of it. You've never been anything but nice to me, and they're treating you like you're already gone. Why are they doing this, Emma? What triggered it? She hesitated. Ashley's in debt. Bad debt. She took out loans for her business that failed, and she's drowning. She keeps saying that family should help family, but her parents already gave her everything they could. I think she sees you as a resource. And she convinced my mom that you'd be better off with their help anyway, so it's not really wrong. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about concern. It was about money they thought they could access. Money they believed I couldn't properly manage because I'd never demonstrated financial success. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so devastating. Thank you for telling me, I said. Emma grabbed my hand. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I kept thinking maybe I was wrong about what they were doing. I left the cafe with 47 forwarded messages on my phone. Proof that my family had been building a case against me for months. Proof that this was calculated, deliberate, and motivated by greed. That night, I forwarded everything to Richard. His response came within an hour. This changes everything. We need to meet tomorrow. Don't contact any family members until we talk. Richard's office felt different this time. Not a sanctuary, but a war room. This is attempted fraud, he said, spreading printouts of Emma's forwarded messages across his desk. They're documenting false evidence to support a legal action. If they file for conservatorship based on these manufactured concerns, we can bury them. I want to do more than just defend, I heard myself say. I want them to face consequences. Richard raised an eyebrow. Meaning if they're going to attack me legally, they should understand what they're actually attacking. We spent 3 hours building the strategy. First, the defensive fortress we'd already started. Medical documentation, cognitive tests, financial records. Second, evidence of their conspiracy. Emma's texts, documentation of their surveillance, their own written words showing premeditation. Third, and most importantly, the reveal. We'll schedule a family meeting, Richard suggested. Formal, at my office. You'll present your actual financial situation with documentation. You'll make it clear that any attempt at conservatorship will be met with legal action for attempted fraud and exploitation of the elderly. They'll say I've been lying. So, privacy isn't illegal, conspiracy to defraud is. I authorized him to begin. Medical records were finalized. Dr. Chen's letter was damning in its clarity. Margaret Collins demonstrates no cognitive impairment whatsoever. She is mentally sharp, makes informed decisions about her health, and manages complex information with ease. The cognitive test results were perfect. My accountant prepared a summary of Collins & Associates' financial health. My business partner, James, wrote a statement about my professional competence and leadership. We were ready. But before we could schedule the meeting, they made their move. It was Saturday morning when Ashley showed up at my door, unannounced, uninvited. Aunt Maggie, we need to talk. Something in her tone sent alarm bells ringing. This wasn't the fake concern of previous visits. This was harder, more aggressive. About what? Can I come in? Against my better judgment, I let her. She walked into my living room with the confidence of someone who believed they held all the power. I've been hearing things, Ashley said, sitting without being invited. Dr. Chen's office called to confirm some records release to a law firm? My blood ran cold. How had she... My friend works in medical records at the complex, Ashley continued, reading my expression. She wasn't supposed to tell me, of course. Confidentiality and all that. But she thought I should know that my aunt was preparing some kind of legal action. I'm protecting my interests. From what? From family trying to help you? Her voice rose. This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior we've been worried about. getting lawyers involved, acting secretive, refusing reasonable support. You mean refusing to let you declare me incompetent? The room went silent. Ashley's mask slipped completely. Emma told you. Yes. That little bitch. She stood up, pacing. Fine, you want to do this directly? Let's do it directly. You're not well, Aunt Maggie. Everyone can see it. You're isolated, eccentric, you make poor decisions. We have documentation of all of it. Documentation you manufactured. Documentation of observable behavior. And when we go to court, if you go to court, I interrupted, my voice ice, I will destroy you. She actually laughed. With what? You're living in a paid-off house worth almost nothing, driving a decade-old car, with no visible means of support beyond whatever scraps you make from your little consulting hobby. You think a judge will believe you're competent to fight us? This was it. The moment I could end this. Tell her the truth? Watch her face change when she realized what she'd actually been threatening. But Richard's voice echoed in my head. Control the narrative. Choose your moment. Don't let them provoke you into revealing things before you're ready. I forced my voice steady. Get out of my house! We're filing on Monday, Ashley said, heading for the door. And when we do, every weird thing you've done, every time you've refused help, every sign of your declining capacity will be in that filing. You're going to lose, Aunt Maggie. And honestly, you'll probably be happier once someone competent is making decisions for you. She left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. I stood frozen in my living room, heart hammering. They were filing Monday, 2 days away. We needed to move faster. I called Richard immediately. They're filing a petition Monday. Then we file an injunction Sunday night. And we schedule that family meeting for Monday afternoon, right after they submit their paperwork. Let them walk into court thinking they're winning, then pull the rug out. Will that work? Maggie, when that judge sees your medical records, your financial statements, and their text messages planning to exploit you, they won't just deny the petition. They'll be lucky if they're not charged with attempted fraud. Sunday was a blur of signatures and notarizations. The injunction was filed at 11 p.m., requesting an emergency hearing before any conservatorship could be imposed. Monday morning, I couldn't eat, couldn't focus. I kept replaying Ashley's words. You're going to lose. Was I? By noon, Richard called. They filed, and the court has scheduled an emergency hearing for Wednesday. We're set. The family meeting is scheduled for your house tomorrow at 6 p.m. I'll be there. Is that all right? My house, your territory, your terms. Let them see where you actually live, in your space. It undermines their narrative of you being unable to manage your environment. That evening, I took Emma's advice and spent time with my cats. Oliver curled in my lap, purring. Luna and Shadow chased each other through the hallway. These animals they'd called evidence of hoarding were my companions, well cared for and happy. I let myself feel the fear, the exhaustion, the betrayal. Then I let it go. Wednesday would come. The truth would come out. And whatever happened after that, at least I would have fought back. For the first time in 23 years, I wasn't hiding. Tuesday morning arrived gray and cold. The family meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. I had the entire day to wait, to second guess, to imagine every possible way this could go wrong. I cleaned the house. Not frantically, but thoroughly. Let them see how I lived. The organized bookshelves, the well-maintained kitchen, the comfortable furniture, the cat towers I'd built myself, the feeding schedule posted on the refrigerator, the vet records filed neatly in the office. Evidence of a competent, careful life. At 2 p.m., my doorbell rang. Emma stood on the porch, looking miserable. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out. "Ashley knows I told you. She's been screaming at me for days. But I had to warn you." "Come in," I said gently. Over tea, Emma told me everything. How Ashley had been borrowing money from family members for years. how the failed business had been just one of many schemes, how she'd convinced Deborah that helping herself to my estate was actually a mercy, since I clearly couldn't manage it. She's desperate, Emma said. And when Ashley gets desperate, she gets mean. Aunt Maggie, she's planning something for tonight. What kind of something? I don't know exactly, but I heard her on the phone with Mom yesterday. They were talking about making an emotional appeal, about how you've been in the family your whole life, how they've always supported you, and how turning against them now shows exactly the kind of instability they've been worried about. They were going to try to manipulate me into backing down. They think if they can make you feel guilty enough, you'll drop the legal stuff and accept their help. Then they can proceed quietly, without a court fight. It was almost impressive in a sociopathic way. Emma left before anyone could see her car. I spent the afternoon preparing, not rehearsing what to say. Richard would handle most of the talking, but preparing mentally for the emotional warfare ahead. They would appeal to family loyalty, to shared history, to my own insecurities that they'd spent decades cultivating. I couldn't let it work. At 5:30, Richard arrived with his briefcase and a calm, professional demeanor that settled my nerves. "Remember," he said, "you don't have to defend your choices. You don't have to explain why you kept your success private. You simply present the facts and let them speak." At 6 p.m. exactly, they arrived. Deborah, Ashley, and Tom. No Emma, which wasn't surprising. They filed into my living room, and I watched Ashley's eyes scan the space, looking for evidence to support her narrative. The cats were in the bedroom, out of sight. The house was immaculate, nothing to criticize. "Thank you for coming," Richard began formally. "We've called this meeting to address some serious concerns that have come to my attention as Mrs. Collins' attorney." "Her attorney?" Deborah's voice was sharp. "Since when does Maggie have an attorney?" "Since 15 years ago, when I began representing her business interests." Confusion flickered across their faces. Business interests. "Before we go further," Richard continued, "I need to address the conservatorship petition you filed yesterday. Mrs. Collins is aware of it and will be presenting evidence at Wednesday's hearing that will conclusively demonstrate her competence." Ashley leaned forward. "This is ridiculous. Aunt Maggie, why are you letting some lawyer turn you against your family? We're trying to help you." There it was. The emotional appeal Emma had warned me about. "Are you?" I asked quietly. "Of course we are. We've been worried sick about you. Living alone, struggling financially, refusing to accept support. And now this, hiring lawyers, acting paranoid. It's exactly the kind of behavior that concerns us." She was good. Her voice trembled with apparent emotion. Tom nodded supportively. Deborah dabbed at her eyes. It might have worked once. Before I'd seen their text messages, before I'd understood what they were really after. "I'd like you to read something," Richard said, pulling out a packet of papers. "These are text messages between the three of you, discussing Mrs. Collins and your plans for her estate." He handed a copy to each of them. I watched the color drain from Ashley's face as she read her own words. Health crisis. More proof she needs help managing her life. "Where did you get these?" Deborah demanded. "That's not relevant. What is relevant is that they demonstrate your petition is not motivated by concern, but by a desire to access assets you believe Mrs. Collins has." "She doesn't have assets," Ashley snapped, then seemed to realize her mistake. "I mean, we're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we love her." "Then you'll be pleased to know," Richard said smoothly, "that Mrs. Collins is in no need of financial assistance. In fact, her annual income substantially exceeds all of yours combined." Silence. "That's impossible," Tom said finally. "It's documented fact. Collins and Associates grossed $8 million last year. Mrs. Collins owns the company outright." I watched them try to process this. Ashley's mouth literally hung open. Deborah looked like she'd been slapped. "You've been lying to us," Deborah whispered, "for years, pretending to struggle while you were rich. I've been living my life privately, I corrected. There's no law requiring me to share my financial information with family. But we thought you needed help. You were trying to control me, I said, my voice cold and steady. You decided I was incompetent and built a case based on manufactured evidence. You documented 3 cats as hoarding. You called normal privacy social isolation. You saw me buying a used car and decided it was proof of instability. Ashley stood abruptly. This is insane. You're not well, Aunt Maggie. You're paranoid, delusional. The court will decide that Wednesday, Richard interrupted. Based on Dr. Chen's letter, cognitive test results showing perfect function and 15 years of successful business management, as well as your text messages showing premeditation to exploit an elderly family member. The words exploit and elderly hit like physical blows. We're leaving, Deborah said stiffly. This is clearly a mistake. We never should have tried to help someone so determined to reject family. They gathered their things. At the door, Ashley turned back. You'll regret this. When you're actually old and actually need help, don't come crying to us. I won't, I promised. The door closed. Richard and I sat in silence for a long moment. That went as expected, he said finally. They'll regroup, come back harder. Let them. We have everything we need. After Richard left, I called Emma to thank her. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called an old friend, Patricia, someone I distanced myself from because family dinners and explanations had become too complicated. Maggie! My God, it's been forever. Is everything okay? I told her everything, about the business, about the family, about the fight ahead. Come over, she said immediately. You shouldn't be alone right now. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed to hear that until the words made my eyes sting with tears. That night, sitting in Patricia's kitchen with wine and honest conversation, I realized how isolated I'd made myself. Not because of the cats or the quiet house, but because I'd been hiding so completely that I'd lost the connections that might have supported me. You're going to win this, Patricia said firmly. And after you do, you're going to stop hiding from people who actually care about you. She was right. It was time to stop being invisible. Wednesday morning, the hearing was at 10 a.m. I dressed carefully, professional but not showy, a simple navy suit, modest jewelry. Let my competence speak through documents, not appearance. Richard met me at the courthouse. They're here, he murmured, with their own attorney. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was the number of people in the courtroom. Tom's mother, some cousins I barely knew, a neighbor from Deborah Street. They'd brought reinforcements. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and the hearing began. Ashley's attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Ms. Reeves, presented their petition. She painted a picture of a confused elderly woman, isolated and defensive, making erratic decisions. Then Richard presented our evidence, Dr. Chen's letter, the cognitive test results, financial statements showing not just competence but excellence in management, 15 years of tax returns, client testimonials about my business acumen, and finally the text messages. Ms. Reeves tried to object. Texts obtained without consent from a family member who voluntarily provided them after witnessing what she believed to be conspiracy to defraud, Richard countered. Judge Morrison read through everything in silence. When she looked up, her expression was stone. I'm denying this petition. Mrs. Collins has demonstrated clear competence. Furthermore, I'm troubled by the evidence suggesting this petition was motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern. She turned to Ashley and Deborah. You're fortunate I'm not referring this for criminal investigation, but I'm warning you, any further attempts to pursue guardianship or conservatorship without substantial new evidence will be viewed as harassment. She banged the gavel. It was over. In the hallway, Ashley was shaking with rage. This isn't over. You think you've won? You've just made an enemy of your entire family. I think we're done here, Richard said firmly, steering me away. But we weren't done. Not really. That evening, they came to my house again. All three of them, but this time their energy was different. Desperate. I almost didn't answer the door, but Richard had advised me to document everything, and I had my phone ready to record. Maggie, please, Deborah said when I opened the door. We need to talk, really talk. Against my better judgment, I let them in. They sat in my living room, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Deborah started crying. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. We made a terrible mistake. We were worried about you, and Ashley convinced me that we were helping, but I see now how wrong it was. It was a performance. I could see that clearly, but it was a good one. We just want to fix this, Tom added. Families shouldn't be fighting in court. This has gone too far. What do you want? I asked flatly. Ashley leaned forward. We want to start over. Forget the legal stuff. We were wrong to try to control your life. But Maggie, her voice shifted, became pleading. You have to understand how confusing this is. You let us think you were struggling for decades. You made us worry. You lied to your own family. Or there it was, turning it back on me. I didn't lie. I just didn't share everything. That's the same thing. We're family. Family doesn't keep secrets like this. Family doesn't try to have each other declared incompetent. I shot back. We thought we were helping. Deborah's tears increased. If you'd just been honest with us, none of this would have happened. This is your fault as much as ours. The gaslighting was almost impressive. Here's what we're proposing, Ashley said, pulling out a folder. Drop any legal action against us. We'll drop any claims about your competence. But in exchange, you need to be more open with family. Set up a family trust, maybe, where we all have transparency about assets, for everyone's protection. I stared at her. You want access to my money. We want family accountability. That's what normal families do. You're acting like we're criminals when we're just asking to be included in your life. After you tried to steal my life, we didn't. Ashley stood up, the mask slipping again. You know what? Fine. Be stubborn, but you should know that everyone in this family knows now about your secret business, your hidden money, your years of lies. And they're not impressed, Maggie. They think you're a selfish, paranoid old woman who values money over family. Ashley, Tom warned. No, she needs to hear this. You've burned every bridge. You went to court against your own sister, your own niece. Do you think anyone will want anything to do with you after this? The threat was clear. Social isolation as punishment. Deborah stood too, wiping her eyes. We came here to make peace, to be the bigger people. But if you're going to throw our concern back in our faces, then we're done. I'll accept that, I said quietly. You'll regret this. When you're actually old and sick and alone, you'll remember that you had family who tried to help. You didn't try to help, you tried to rob me. There's a difference. Ashley's face contorted with rage. You smug bitch. You think you're so smart? We'll make sure everyone knows what you are. A liar who turned on her own family. Good luck finding anyone who wants to be around you after we're done. They stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in the sudden silence, heart pounding. For a moment, the fear crept back. What if they were right? What if I'd destroyed the only family I had? Then I remembered the text messages, the cold calculation, the way Ashley had looked at me like I was already dead, just an estate to be managed. Whatever I'd lost, it wasn't real family. It was a performance I'd been participating in for decades. I was done performing. I called Patricia, my friend from the other night. Can I come over? I need to not be alone right now. Come now, I'll open wine. Driving to her house, I realized something. The fear Ashley had tried to instill wasn't working. Instead, it was crystallizing into something harder. Determination. They'd threatened me, tried to manipulate me, promised to destroy my reputation. Let them try. I had truth on my side, and I was no longer afraid to use it. The social media posts started Friday morning. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years posted a vague status. Sad when family members value money over relationships. Some people show their true colors when they think they're better than everyone else. Then another. And another. A whisper campaign, carefully orchestrated to paint me as the villain. Ashley was making good on her threat. By noon, I had 3 messages from distant relatives asking if everything was okay, and if it was true, I'd sued my own sister. The story was spreading, distorted through each retelling. Patricia was furious. "You need to tell your side." "No," I said. "I need to let them keep talking." "What?" "Every lie they tell, every exaggeration they spread, it's more evidence. Richard said if they escalate harassment, we can pursue legal action, so let them escalate." But I'd underestimated Ashley's desperation. Monday afternoon, I received a call from my largest client, Henderson Corporation. The CEO's assistant asked if I could come in for an urgent meeting. My stomach dropped. This was my business. They wouldn't. At the meeting, CEO David Henderson looked uncomfortable. "Maggie, I received a troubling call today from someone claiming to be your niece." "Oh, God." "She expressed concern about your mental health, suggested that you were in the early stages of dementia and might not be reliable for our ongoing projects. She said the family was trying to help you transition to retirement, but you were resistant." The room spun. This was beyond family drama. This was a direct attack on my livelihood. "David," I said, keeping my voice level, "I recently had a complete medical evaluation, including cognitive testing. I'm happy to have my physician contact you directly if you'd like verification, though that's highly unusual. What you received was a malicious call from a family member who recently tried and failed to have me declared legally incompetent. There's court documentation of all of this." His expression shifted. "She tried to have you declared incompetent?" "Yes. A judge reviewed medical evidence, financial records, and 15 years of business documentation and denied the petition entirely. The family member making these calls is currently facing potential legal consequences for her actions." "Jesus, Maggie, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Do you need any support from us?" "Just your continued trust, which I've earned over 8 years of successful projects." "Of course, and if she calls again, I'll be referring her to our legal department." Leaving Henderson Corporation, my hands were shaking. Ashley had gone after my business, my career, the thing I'd built from nothing. This was war. I called Richard immediately. She contacted my client, lied about my mental health, tried to sabotage my business. That's tortious interference at minimum, possibly defamation. Do you have proof she made the call? My client will confirm it. Good. We're filing for a restraining order. And Maggie, I think it's time to stop playing defense. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I wrote everything down. The full story. Every detail of their scheme. The text messages, the court hearing, the aftermath. I documented it all in a clear, factual narrative. Then I sent it to every member of my extended family with a simple note. This is what actually happened. Draw your own conclusions. I attached the court documents, Dr. Chen's letter, the text messages, everything. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours, my inbox was full. Some relatives were horrified by what Ashley and Deborah had done. Others accused me of airing family business publicly. But the narrative was no longer solely under Ashley's control. Tuesday morning, Deborah called. Her voice was shaking, with rage or fear I couldn't tell. How dare you send that to everyone? How dare you humiliate us like this? I provided facts. If those facts are humiliating, perhaps you should have made better choices. You've destroyed this family. Ashley is getting death threats from her own cousins. Tom's mother won't speak to us. You've turned everyone against us. I sent documentation of what you tried to do to me. If people are upset, they're upset at your actions, not my disclosure. We're your family. You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my assets. You're not my family. You're criminals who happen to share my DNA. Silence then. You'll pay for this. Is that a threat? She hung up. Wednesday brought the restraining order hearing. Ashley showed up without an attorney this time, probably couldn't afford one. She tried to argue that she'd been acting out of concern, that I was blowing things out of proportion. The judge reviewed the evidence, the contact with my client, the social media campaign, the documented threats. Ms. Ashley Sullivan, I'm granting a restraining order prohibiting you from contacting Mrs. Collins or any of her business associates. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the prosecutor's office review this matter for potential charges of harassment and interference with business relations. Ashley's face went white. You can't. This is my aunt. This is family business. This is criminal behavior, the judge corrected. You attempted to destroy her livelihood with false statements. That's not family business. That's actionable harm. The gavel fell. In the hallway, Ashley confronted me one last time, violating the restraining order before it was even officially filed. You've won, she spat. Are you happy? You've destroyed my life. My mother won't talk to me. My cousins hate me. I'll probably be charged with crimes, all because you couldn't just share your money with family. All because you couldn't accept that my life was my own, I corrected. You made every choice that led here, Ashley. I just refused to be your victim. Security escorted her out before she could respond. Standing in the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Utterly, completely free. The prosecutor's office moved faster than I'd expected. By Friday, Ashley was formally charged with attempted fraud, elder abuse, and interference with business relations. Deborah was named as a co-conspirator. Richard called with updates. The prosecutor is taking this seriously. Apparently, they've been seeing an increase in family-based financial exploitation of elderly people, and they want to make an example. I'm not elderly, I said reflexively. In legal terms, you're in the protected age category, and Ashley's text messages about exploiting your declining years aren't helping her case. Tom filed for divorce within a week. According to Emma, he'd been horrified when he fully understood what his wife had planned and wanted no part of it. Deborah was facing the collapse of her marriage and her relationship with her own daughter, who'd moved out and was barely speaking to her. The family fracture lines were clear now. Some relatives had rallied around Deborah and Ashley, believing their version of events, but more had been disgusted by what they'd tried to do. I received apologies from cousins I hadn't heard from in decades, expressing shame that they'd believed the lies. My business thrived. Once the truth came out, several clients actually reached out with new projects, impressed by how I'd handled the situation. Shows grace under pressure, one CEO said. That's exactly what we need for this turnaround project. But the real victory came in March. Emma called me, her voice subdued. Aunt Maggie, I thought you should know. Ashley's pleading guilty. Her lawyer worked out a deal, probation, restitution, and a permanent record. She's claiming she had a mental breakdown from financial stress. And Deborah? Mom's taken a plea, too. Lesser charges since she wasn't the primary instigator, but she'll have a criminal record. And Dad has made it clear they're done. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt exhausted. How are you doing? I asked Emma. Honestly, relieved. I've been so stressed, caught between everyone. But now it's done. The truth is out and people are facing consequences. She paused. Can I ask you something? Why did you hide your success all these years? It was the question I'd been asking myself. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of their judgment, their envy, their attempts to become involved. I thought making myself small would keep me safe. Did it? No, it just made me invisible. And when people can't see you clearly, they fill in the gaps with their own stories. I let them create a narrative about me instead of showing them who I really was. After we hung up, I sat with that realization. My silence hadn't protected me. It had made me vulnerable. Because when they decided to attack, there'd been no counter-narrative, no one who could say, wait, I know Maggie and this doesn't make sense. I'd built a successful business but failed to build a life that matched. Time to fix that. The legal proceedings concluded in April. Ashley was sentenced to 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the stress and legal fees she'd caused. Deborah received a lighter sentence, but lost her standing in the family completely. Tom was granted full custody of their younger children, citing her moral unfitness. David Henderson called in May with an interesting proposition. Maggie, I've been thinking. You've been running this business solo for years, and you're clearly brilliant at it. But have you ever considered taking on a partner? Expanding? What did you have in mind? We spent 3 months negotiating. By August, Collins & Associates had merged with Henderson's corporate strategy division, creating a powerhouse consulting firm. I maintained creative control but gained resources, infrastructure, and most importantly, a succession plan that didn't require me to hide my success. The first thing I did with my increased visibility, I hired Emma as a junior consultant. She'd graduated with a business degree and had a sharp mind being wasted in her previous job. "You're really giving me this chance?" she asked, almost crying during her job offer. "You stood up for what was right when it cost you. That's the kind of integrity this company needs." September brought a different kind of vindication. Ashley's bankruptcy filing became public record. The debts she'd hidden from everyone were staggering. Nearly $500,000 in failed business ventures, personal loans, and credit card debt. She'd been drowning, and she'd seen me as a life raft. I felt pity. Not forgiveness, but pity. Deborah, meanwhile, had moved to Arizona to live with a cousin, unable to face the family she'd alienated. She'd sent one email months after the court case. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything." I hadn't responded. There was nothing to say. But there was one more thing I needed to do. In October, I hosted a dinner party. Not a family gathering, I was done with those, but a celebration with the people who'd actually supported me. Patricia and her wife, Emma and her boyfriend, James, my business partner, Dr. Chen, Richard and his husband. We filled my dining room with laughter and honest conversation. No performances, no hidden agendas, just people who knew me, really knew me, and valued me for who I actually was. "To visible lives," Patricia toasted. "To visible lives," we echoed. That night, standing in my kitchen while Oliver wound around my ankles, I realized something profound. I hadn't just won a legal battle. I'd won my life back. The business was thriving. My reputation was intact. The people who'd tried to exploit me were facing consequences. But more than that, I was finally, fully myself. No more hiding, no more playing small, no more letting fear dictate how I showed up in the world. I was Margaret Collins. I'd built an empire from a spare bedroom. I'd faced down family betrayal and come out stronger. And I was just getting started. By the end of the year, my life had transformed in ways I'd never imagined. The merged consulting firm, now called Collins Henderson Strategic Partners, had landed 3 Fortune 100 clients in 4 months. My name was appearing in business journals. I'd been invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. The invisibility I'd maintained for decades had been replaced with visibility I'd earned. More importantly, I'd built something I'd been missing: community. Patricia and I had started a weekly dinner tradition. She'd introduced me to her book club, where I'd met other professional women who understood the strange dynamics of success and family expectations. I joined a board for a nonprofit helping women business owners, putting my experience to use helping others avoid the mistakes I'd made. Emma was flourishing in her new role. She had a gift for client relations and strategic thinking, and I'd begun mentoring her seriously. She'd moved into her own apartment, cut her hair, and seemed lighter somehow, freed from the toxic dynamics of her mother's house. I got a letter from Mom, she told me one afternoon over coffee. Oh, she wants to meet, says she's in therapy and wants to make amends. Emma's voice was carefully neutral. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's changed, but another part remembers how she looked at you, like you were already gone, just assets to distribute. Trust your instincts, I advised. Real change takes time. You don't owe her access to your life just because she's decided she's ready. Emma nodded. That's what my therapist says too. Meanwhile, Ashley's situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. The bankruptcy hadn't discharged all her debts. Student loans and the court-ordered restitution to me were still owed. She'd moved back in with her father, who'd remarried, and made it clear the arrangement was temporary. Her professional reputation was destroyed. The conviction made it nearly impossible to find work in any field requiring trust or financial responsibility. I heard through family channels that she'd taken a job at a call center, making barely above minimum wage. The woman who'd tried to steal my $8 million company was now living in a basement bedroom, drowning in debt, with a criminal record that would follow her forever. I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. Deborah's fall had been different but equally complete. Tom had finalized the divorce, keeping the house and primary custody of their teenage children. The affair came out during proceedings. Apparently, she'd been involved with someone from her church, and the hypocrisy had been too much for the congregation that had been her primary social circle. She'd lost her marriage, her children's respect, her social standing, and her reputation. The move to Arizona wasn't a fresh start, but an escape from the wreckage. She keeps trying to tell everyone it was a misunderstanding, Emma reported, that you blew things out of proportion because you were paranoid. But the court records are public. People can read her text messages for themselves. The text messages, those cold, calculated plans to exploit someone they claim to love. No amount of reframing could make those look good. In January, I received an interesting call. A journalist writing a piece about family financial exploitation wanted to interview me. I hesitated, but Richard encouraged it. Your story could help other people recognize the warning signs, and it cements the public record of what really happened. The article ran in March in a major women's magazine. The Silent Success: How One Woman's Family Tried to Steal Her Company. It was fair and factual, including some of Ashley's and Deborah's own words from the text messages. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of women reached out to me, sharing their own stories of family exploitation, of hiding success to avoid jealousy, of being targeted by relatives who saw them as resources rather than people. I'd accidentally become an advocate. By April, I'd been invited to testify before a state legislative committee about closing loopholes in conservatorship laws. The Attorney General cited my case as an example of needed reforms. Ashley's name appeared in the legislative record as a cautionary tale. Emma called me after the testimony aired on the local news. Did you see Ashley's Facebook post? I hadn't. I'd blocked her on all platforms. She's claiming she's the real victim, that you're using your money and connections to destroy her out of spite, that everything she did was out of genuine concern and you've twisted it. Do people believe her? No. Everyone's sharing screenshots of the court documents and your testimony. She's making herself look worse. That was the thing about the truth. Once it was fully documented, lies couldn't compete. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. We'd hired 12 new consultants. We'd opened a satellite office in Boston. My personal income had increased to the point where I'd endowed a scholarship at my alma mater for non-traditional students returning to education. The scholarship was named after my mother, who died 5 years earlier, still believing I'd never amounted to much. It felt like reclaiming something. I'd bought a new house, too. Nothing ostentatious, but spacious and modern, with a huge yard for the cats and a home office where I could work in peace. I decorated it exactly how I wanted. No compromises for anyone else's taste. Patricia helped me move in. "You know what I love about this?" she said, looking around the living room. "It's so clearly yours. Not trying to impress anyone, just comfortable and real. That's the goal," I agreed. One evening in May, I received an email from a name I didn't immediately recognize. Tom, Deborah's ex-husband. "Maggie, I owe you an apology. I knew Deborah was fixated on your situation, but I didn't realize the extent of what she and Ashley were planning until it was too late. I'm horrified by what they tried to do. I want you to know that I've established college funds for the kids that Deborah has no access to, specifically to prevent any future schemes. I hope you're well." I wrote back, "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your integrity. I wish you and the kids well. Some wounds could heal, some bridges could be rebuilt, but not with everyone." Deborah's rare messages were always manipulative, always trying to reframe history. Ashley's last attempt to contact me had violated the restraining order, resulting in additional charges. I'd stopped reading anything from either of them. They'd made their choices. Now they lived with consequences. I'd made mine too, and I was finally genuinely happy. So here's my question for you. What would you have done? Would you have stayed silent, protecting yourself through invisibility? Would you have confronted your family earlier, before it reached the courts? Or would you have done exactly what I did, built your fortress in private, and only revealed it when attacked? Family dynamics are complicated. Money makes them worse. And sometimes the people who claim to love you most are actually seeing only what they can get from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to protect yourself from family? Have you hidden parts of your success to avoid jealousy or exploitation? And if this story resonated with you, I have others. Stories of people who faced impossible situations and found their way through. Stories of standing up when everyone expected you to stay down. Subscribe so you don't miss them, because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, openly, and without apology. Thank you for listening to my story, for witnessing what I went through, for understanding that sometimes winning means losing people you thought you needed. I'm Margaret Collins, and I'm no longer invisible.